I'm going to talk today about peace, about finding peace, maybe about what peace is. Because for me, I guess peace is at the heart of absolutely everything that I'm doing. So therefore, as you can see, I found myself a pretty beautiful place to talk about peace. But this has not been particularly engineered. I was just out for a walk and inspiration came upon me. So what's peace? Acceptance, submission, maybe. Goes back to authenticity again. Not having to prove what you are and therefore being able to let go of the mask. But I think the main thing about peace is that you give up trying to battle the world, to fight the system, and you allow yourself to come to the understanding that you're part of it. And that's hard, because that means your ego is not as big as you thought it was. It means you're not as significant as you thought you were. It means that no matter how hard you try, there's a lot of stuff that you can't control. And that's annoying. But it's also incredibly freeing. I have to find myself in the light. So what does that give you? It gives you a sense of freedom, a sense of release. There's no longer a need to push against walls, to fight against things or create things or try to create things that are not. It's a wonderful sense of universality, of unity with all this incredible beauty. And with it then comes gratitude, enormous gratitude, thankfulness, amazement, awe, and peace. And let's say what peace isn't. Peace is not Zen, or at least not my definition of Zen. In fact, hey, let's go one step further. Let's go, this is my definition of peace, and somebody else's definition of peace may be completely different. But my definition of peace is certainly not Zen. It's not giving in or giving up either. My definition of peace still has direction. It still has goals. It's not as if I've submitted to the universe's will and decided, whatever will be, will be. But it's shrunk my ego. It's reduced my need to prove myself. And the hilarious thing is, because I have less need to prove myself, suddenly I can do a video where I kind of am proving myself. But it matters less, I'm no longer doing it to prove that I'm special, interesting, Instead, I'm doing it because I want other people to experience peace. Because if we all experience peace, or even a few more people experience peace, wow, would the world be a better place? It's already an incredible place. But imagine if we were all, gosh, I feel a song coming on, living in harmony. So yeah, peace does not suddenly mean giving in or giving up or sacrificing your humanity, your urges, your desires. For me, at least, that's a step too far. And I don't want to live like a hermit. It also doesn't mean that you won't be triggered, or at least for me, doesn't mean I'm not triggered. I can be triggered. I can still respond authentically. I guess what it means, part of peace is permitting yourself the entire range of emotions. And maybe the opposite of peace is limiting your range of emotions. Maybe that's another way of describing peace. Because when you are peaceful, you can trust yourself, you can trust the universe, you can trust that everything is going in a certain way, and you know, part of that is your choice and part of it is the dance of the world. But it permits you to be yourself. And part of being yourself, part of being authentic, is getting angry, it's getting frustrated, it's feeling desire, it's having love, hate, bad thoughts as well as good thoughts. These are all part of existence. And so with peace comes that permission to be completely you. And that is so liberating. So I think I've sold peace sufficiently, right? The question then is how does one find peace? And I can't really tell that to somebody else, dictate that to somebody else. For me, and I suspect for many people, peace came after pain. I had to take a long, hard look in the mirror and decide that I was causing myself to not be at peace, that I was fighting against reality to a certain extent, right? Fighting against laws that were larger than me. And the idea of fighting against that is absurd. But when you have an ego, you kind of think you can do that. So I think a lot of people find peace through pain because they have no choice but to submit to the fact that they haven't got as much control as they thought they had. You know, that's one of the learning lessons of pain. For me, what it meant, with that acceptance of a sort of lack of control, was also an understanding that I was creating my own sense of reality. I was creating my perception on my life, and that was doing me no good. So I stopped doing that. I didn't know what on earth I was going to do. I had no idea what on earth I was going to do, but I knew I wasn't going to do that. And there is something about that opening up, accepting that you don't know it all, accepting that you don't need to prove yourself, accepting that you're part of the human race and therefore you are fallible, right? That people make mistakes, that I can make mistakes, that this might be a mistake, that people might disagree, but that the route to authenticity is too important to abandon for that. So it's partly carrot, partly stick, right? There's a sort of a pain that says this mask, this lie is doing you no good. It's causing you harm. There's a sort of there's a carrot in front that says there's a better way. And I think most people have felt these moments from time to time, these moments of flow, or when things just feel right. And you know when you're on track and you know when you're off track, even if you don't have a great deal of bodily awareness. I think if you tune in, you can find out when you're on track and when you're off track. So for me, the pain said, you're off track. The decision, which was different to the prior occasions, was, I'm going to pay attention. Normally, the ego gets in the way and goes, try harder. You should have done this, you should have done that, how stupid you are. Whatever it may be, right? The mental chatter. I don't know why. Maybe, you have these stages in readiness to change. Maybe it took 10 years for me to find that moment. But the moment said you're doing it wrong. You don't know how to do it better. You need to look outside of yourself. You need to stop doing what you were doing before, right? The definition of insanity is doing what you did before and expecting things to change. So I did anything that was different from that, And that creates another layer of peace, because somehow when you give up on trying to control the world, life starts to deliver back. Good stuff occurs that you couldn't possibly have predicted. And you have life experiences that you couldn't possibly have imagined. There's no way you could have controlled. And they come from giving in and seeing what comes back. So one of the ways to do it, if you're kind of the norm, is to be forced into it to a certain extent by some painful experience. But there is another way. You can make a choice. Nobody has to suffer. We choose, right? And one of the things that I've learned is that in order to suffer, basically most of our emotions will move around, right? They'll pass. 20, 30 seconds, most emotions, they normally change. So if you're having recurrent emotions, recurrent thoughts, recurrent feelings, to some extent you're throwing wood on your own fire, right? You are rekindling those feelings. So if those feelings are not nice, if they're not the feelings that you want, there's two things you can do, right? You can lean into them, you can find out what the message is behind them, or you can choose not to think them, right? Rather than being there. So there is an element where you do not need to go through pain to become you. But it takes a massive decision, right? Because it's uncomfortable. Because what it requires is for you to stop being consistent with how you were yesterday. And that's one of these kind of big human needs. We require, we demand, we need to remain consistent with how we are yesterday. Because that's how people know us. That's how we present ourselves to the world. It's a scary thing to not do that. That's why pain is usually useful, because the scariness of that is less than the scariness of the pain. And so it's like, I must change. So the alternative way is for the gleaming carrot to be so massive, the potential to be so huge, that becomes more important than the uncomfortableness of remaining consistent with yesterday. I can feel it now. I can feel a shiver that kind of grows from my feet up to my heart. And I can feel the peace in my heart. I can feel the peace in my stomach. And I can feel the peace around me. I can feel the harmony around me. I can feel a sense of unity. I don't want to get evangelical. I'm one of these guys who's got his feet very firmly on the ground. But I can feel some sort of a thread going up into the sky. It feels safe. It feels permissive. And that's the moment where you can choose then to start being who you are, because there's nothing there to prove. You can just be. So there you go. That's my 15 minutes. I think that's sufficient on peace. We've barely scratched the surface, but I'll carry on, and this will do as a start. If you enjoy this, find a way of subscribing or looking at the other videos that I'm going to add. I'm going to add these on Facebook. I'm going to add them on YouTube. And I'm going to go through all of the most fundamental points about becoming you. You know, it's Carl Rogers that said, we're all on the path to becoming a person. And it's a wonderful journey. It's an adventure. And it starts somehow with handing off the ego. Great. There you go. Bye.